Hey, what's going on? Nick Unsworth here, and so I've got a special guest here on this episode of Life on Fire TV, and it's actually sneak peek footage from our Ignite Your Movement annual event. And so we've got Cole Hatter. He's sharing about how to literally reframe how you think about money. Because what's wild is that for most of us, it's actually money beliefs and things that are holding us back. It's keeping us stuck at the six-figure level when you want to be at seven-figure. Shoot, if you're a seven-figure business, it's keeping you there and not getting to eight. So this is one of the things that for me as a business coach, I help people with on a daily basis because it is something that holds you back. And what's so cool is that when Cole, as he broke this down at the event and what you're about to see, we had so many people have these crazy just breakthrough moments where, they're just coming up saying, oh my God, like I just never thought of it in that way. And Cole unlocked me, or Cole, just totally switched how I think about money. And so it's really, really impactful. So I'm excited for you to check this thing out and just really focus and pay attention because this can be something that changes how you show up in business for years and years to come. So check it out. This is a real treat. We've got a really good friend who has driven down from the OC. He's going to be ripping back up there tonight to be with us. And so literally every weekend, it's very serendipitous how this all happened. His schedule is so crazy, but the one weekend that was open is today, this weekend. How good is that, right? And so our speaker for today coming in he is just a guy that is completely on fire. When you think about what life on fire is, you're going to hear stories from someone who he is just lives his life completely on fire. His stories, we talk about choice point, and we talk about the things that we've been through to get to where we are, and his story is like none other, from near-death experiences all the way up until just losing it all and regaining it. So it's a lot of the theme that we've had here, over the last couple of days. But what I'm excited about is Cole's here to speak about and talk about money, because we touched on some money beliefs. We touched about abundance and a lot of different things today. We talked through marketing and all these different types of lessons and things that we learned. But the thing is that what Cole's going to bring to the table tonight is a completely different perspective. A completely different what? Perspective. And so his perspective, what I happen to really enjoy about it, is the fact that he has a 7 to 8 figure perspective on money. Meaning he thinks differently about money than everybody else. And so by me just being around Cole, I now think about money differently. He's elevated me. He's elevated the people around him. And he's going to be breaking it down tonight for you guys. And there are so many nuggets. I want you to sit up in your chair. I want you to be present. Be focused, be here with us, because there's so much to get out of this. Without further ado, my main man, Cole Hatter!
Hey, wait. I'll be rocking them beats. I'll be rocking Quick question. Who's wearing it better? Who's wearing it?
All right, so you want to be the old way of thinking Cole Hatter or the new way of thinking Nick Unsworth?
I'm on the other side. Apparently something about living a life on fire involves blue jeans, vests, and button-downs. So
I know, right?
Right when I walked in today, I saw this, and I was like, figures. Who called who? Our wives' fiancés dress us, right? They're back there conspiring on what we'll wear tomorrow. So thanks for that, Nick. Welcome, everybody. Like Nick said, my name is Cole. You guys excited this evening? Yes? How many of you have been to one of Nick's events before, by a show of hands? How many of you then have never, and this is your first time ever? That doesn't look like everybody. How many of you won't raise your hands no matter what I ask tonight? Where are you guys? I know, there you are. Thank you for your honesty. I know you're here as well. I do want to, again, thank Nick for having me out and being a part of this event. And it's kind of a cool, our story. Nick and my story is actually kind of cool. He literally jogged right into my life one day. I don't know if he's shared that yet about me. I was at his building just across the bay there, meeting with a mutual friend of ours who you got to see yesterday, John Lee Dumas. And so I was waiting for John because I was about 10 minutes early to our appointment and just kind of sitting on the little courtyard wall. And sure enough, all sweaty in his gym clothes or whatever, comes jogging up Nick. And he's like, hey, bro, are you locked out? Like, do you need some help? And I was like, oh, I'm going to meet my friend. He said, who? I said, John. And he's like, oh, John's my friend. So anyway, he came up to John's apartment, and we ended up all hanging out. What was that, like 3 straight hours, Nick? Something like that. Like he didn't have it planned in his day, but 3 straight hours. And that's when, for the first time ever, I got to meet him in person. I had already seen his brand, and when he walked up, I'm like, you're the Life on Fire dude. So I'm sure he felt all celebrity status. Like, yeah, that's right. No paparazzi, please, I'm sweaty. But we ended up hanging out for 3 hours that day. And that's where I knew that Nick wouldn't just be someone that I was continuing to learn from and be exposed to, but would want to invest in a friendship. And that friendship has evolved over the last year and a half to we're great friends now. And it's an absolute honor to stand on his stage to kind of share my experiences with you guys. So excited to be here. What Nick has asked me to focus on specifically is the topic of money. In my entrepreneurial career, I've had to focus on not just making it, but leveraging it as well. There's a lot of different ways to make money depending on what industry you're in. I'm an investor, and I'm going to talk more about what I invest in a few minutes. But before I get started, for any of you who have seen me speak before, I have a different type of speaking style. I do what's called accelerated learning, and it requires two things from you. Now, the first is energy. And I don't think we're going to have to worry about that because I saw you a second ago, everyone doing whatever that was, line dancing and all that. So, oh, you don't want to see me do any of this, man. I'll get. Okay, my wife's already getting embarrassed, but just sit still. I would spin on my head, but I don't want to mess up my hair. So the first thing I need is energy, and it seems like you guys have got that. But the second thing is called participation. What is it called? Exactly. And so what they've shown through learning studies is if I just sit up here and talk and that's it, and you guys should remember this for the next day you have tomorrow here with Nick, and for all future experiences learning, if you're one of the people like I used to be where you just sit and you absorb, scientifically proven you can only absorb 10 to 15% of what's been discussed. So that's not bad, but it's not great. If you choose to take written notes as well, which is why you should get some papers and pens passed out to you here in the next few minutes. If you choose to take notes as well, it heightens your retention of what you've learned up to 20, and in some cases, when they study these people, 25%, which is better. But they found that as soon as you use your voices, when you hear, write, and then speak, your retention goes up to 80%. Now, why not 100%? Well, because we're not computers, right? We're human beings. We can't retain everything. But we can all agree that 80% is a lot better than 15%, yes? So what I've learned to do to help you get the most out of what we're going to discuss is to have you listen, have you write, and then have you speak. And the way I do that is when I say something important like, oh, I need 2 things from you, I'll then ask, how many things do I need? And you'll all shout. I guarantee you a week from now, if someone says, how many things do you need to learn? You will yell. Because you didn't just hear it, you said it as well. Got it? Say, I got it? Perfect. So a little bit briefly on my story and how this all got started. Many of you are, I guess, familiar with a bit of my story, and we don't need to go into the details of that. I was a firefighter. I got into a couple of accidents 2 months apart that ended that career, put me in a wheelchair for a while. And no longer physically being able to walk. For a time, I had a bruised spinal column, which put swelling on my spine, and from my L4 below, nothing worked. But at about the year mark, I was up and walking again. But while I was in that place of having to figure out what it was I was going to do now in my life, I had to start evaluating. I was 21 years old, and a lot of people came up and said, hey, dude, you're only 21, firefighting's out, but go to school, get some other degree, and just pursue a new career, a new avenue. And I didn't see a connection in pursuing a new degree and corporate America with what I wanted most in life. God put it on my heart to help people, and I decided that firefighting was a great outlet for not only being able to save lives, play with fire, but also get paid for it. It was a perfect combination, right? This is getting me excited over here. And so, and my wife knows, I like fire. And so that was a great career for me, and when that ended, and people said, well, you should probably just go into the corporate scene and try to be as successful as you can. Not that that's a bad pick for some, but it wasn't the best fit for me. So I ended up into real estate investing for one real simple reason. My next door neighbors, so I briefly covered my accident. It was bad enough that I had to move back in with mom and dad. I couldn't even feed myself. At 21 years old, I was having to be cared for, the whole deal. And so while I was living there, the next door neighbors were doing very, very well financially. They were a husband-wife real estate team. He was a broker, she was an agent, but she really only worked part-time. She was more of a stay-at-home mom. She's always cruising the neighborhood with the dogs, hanging out with people, right? And every now and then would grab a listing. And for anybody in here in the real estate business, as a realtor in the Southern California market, she was making 6 figures a year, working very part-time, right? Only getting a 3% commission, listing $600, $800 million homes. 5 or 6 of those a year, she was clearing 6 figures. And so I was looking at her lifestyle, and I was observing the way she lived, and I said, I'm in. That's awesome. So I went to my parents and I said, I know what I finally want to do with my life. They said, what? And I said, I want to be a stay-at-home mom too, right? I mean, look at her lifestyle. She's just the cars, the home, the everything. No, that wasn't it. But I did go out there and I got my real estate license and I pursued the real estate industry, first as an agent, then as an investor. And as I developed and grew in that career, I now invest in all things. I still will invest in real estate. It's my bread and butter. But I also invest in businesses. I do angel investing. Anybody familiar with what that is in here? Right on. And I've even partnered with a few and do a little bit of VC stuff, venture capital. That's kind of like what you see on Shark Tank. Where a group of us have money together. I'm involved in a fund where we have $100 million, where we invest in all types of things, right? From businesses to actual real estate. I just got involved in a deal where I'm lending on a big project that's happening in Ireland. So all around the world, I'm putting my money out there. And as an investor, I've had to learn to get a whole new relationship with money. And what I have found is that many people, whether it be culturally or whether it's how we're raised, we buy into beliefs around the mindset around money that aren't exactly the right way of thinking, if that makes sense. And there's no real origin. If I surveyed the room, we don't really remember where our money beliefs come from. It's just kind of absorbed by being American, right? And maybe it's our parents, maybe it's TV, maybe it's our teachers, but we're taught to be afraid of it. We're taught to be afraid of losing it. We're taught to be afraid of being in debt with it. And we're certainly taught to be afraid of being successful with it. I meet people who some of their greatest fears are becoming millionaires. As crazy as that sounds, you guys are like, yeah, right, man, that would solve all my problems. I know people who literally self-sabotage because when they see the clear path to success, they're so afraid of what that will do to maybe their self-identity that they don't want to do it. And I know we have some of those beliefs in the room because prior to coming on stage, I got to hang out with Nick in their staff room, and I saw some broken boards that talked about that some of you this weekend were breaking through some of your fears around success. And so I want to talk about where our mindset comes from. And it's an interesting story. I'm going to start off by quoting Zig Ziglar. Anybody heard of Zig Ziglar in here? An amazing man we sadly lost in November of 2012. I followed a lot of his work. And he has a perfect explanation to where he's talking about where our beliefs in general come from. But as it applies to money, I think it's totally accurate. And so he tells a story of being a young man, a newlywed. And if you know who Zig was, he died of old age. So being a newlywed, we're putting him in the, 40s or so. And he would watch his new wife, after a few years of marriage, she would always be in charge of cooking the ham for the holiday season. Someone else would bring the turkey, someone else would have the mashed potatoes, she would do the ham. And he would watch his wife every year take that perfectly good ham, cut the end of it off, take that perfectly good meat, throw it out, and cook the rest of the ham. And after saying this a couple of times, he finally has to ask, sweetheart, why are you throwing away perfectly good meat? And she says, oh, well, that's what mom taught me. It makes the meat taste better. He's like, okay, I buy it, but why does it make the meat taste better? What is the science behind what's happening? And she goes on to say, I don't know the science, Zig. Mom taught me. So he's like, all right, let's get my mother-in-law on the phone. So he calls mom-in-law and says, what's up, mom-in-law? It's Zig. Quick question. Why do you cut the ends of the hams off when you cook them? And she responds with the same thing. Well, it makes the meat taste better, Zig. And he's like, all right, I've heard that before, but why? What is the science to why it tastes better? And she's like, Zig, I don't know. Grandma taught me. So Zig's like, all right, we got to get Grandma on the phone. Now remember, Grandma, when she was a young woman growing up, we're talking sometime in the 1800s. So Zig gets Granny on the phone and says, what's up, Grandma? It's Zig. Granny says, what's up, Zig? And he's like, okay, got to ask you a question. You taught your daughter, my mother-in-law, to cut the ends of the hams off. Who taught her daughter, my wife, to cut the ends of the hams off? Because it makes the meat taste better. Granny, why does it taste better? You know what Grandma said? Zig, it doesn't make it taste any better. That was just the only way I could get it to fit into my pan. And now 2 generations later, we see people making the same mistakes. Now, was Grandma wrong? No. Because in Grandma's day, back in the 1800s, maybe ovens and pans were small enough that was the right decision to make with the ham in that era. But yet 2 generations later, where ovens are much larger and pans are much bigger, we see people making the same decisions where although at once upon a time in history it might have been the best choice, now it no longer is. And Zig uses that as an illustration of what people do with their decisions today, and I see it happening with money as well. Because we're all taught to believe and act with our money in ways that wasn't necessarily wrong once upon a time. But today, the rules of money have what? They've changed. And so the fact that Americans are taught to do the exact same thing that either their parents or grandparents were taught to do with money, who lived through world wars, Great Depressions, Holocausts, and events like that, global catastrophes of what they had to do with their money, they're teaching us to do the same thing with it. And what I found in my life that I needed to do to get the results I wanted is to do the exact opposite of what everyone else is doing with theirs. There are some sad statistics in our country today. The Department of Health and Human Services says that check this out, less than 7% of Americans can retire and live the life they lived when they were still employed. Less than 7%. 93%, just over, 93% of Americans, when they retire, they have to either go into some part-time work, like the people we see greeting us at Walmart, not making fun of anybody or pointing fingers. You know who I'm talking about. I live close to Disneyland. A lot of them work there. Or they have to rely on somebody or something to take care of them. Now, that doesn't sound like the American dream to me, that we have a 93% chance of never retiring, either working till we die or turning to our children or families and saying, can you help? So what I've found is, you know what, if I do what everyone else is doing, I'm going to get what everyone else is getting. So I decided to do the exact opposite. I decided to do the exact what? Opposite of what everyone else is doing. Now, there's two clear, distinct thoughts around this. And Nick has already set this up for you guys this weekend. There's the old way of thinking, and then there's the entrepreneurial way of thinking. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah? And I'm not saying that one is right and one is wrong, because one once upon a time may have been accurate, but as things have changed, we might need to see the other side of the coin. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? So we believe we create these mindsets around things, right? That there's one side of the coin and the other. For instance, how many sides of the coin are there? How many? A lot of you said two. Let me ask you a question. If I pulled a coin out of my pocket and rolled it across this stage, would it be rolling on heads or tails? It'd be rolling on the third side, the edge. And so, obviously, we can think that there's only one side of the coin or that there's another, but what Nick has taught you this weekend is to be on the edge, and he said that's the position of wisdom. And so what I'm going to do, focus specifically on in the next few minutes that I have with you guys, is how to look at money the exact what? The exact what? Opposite way that we may have been taught. All respect to Grandma and Grampy and whoever taught us our money beliefs, right? Respecting that in their era, when their ovens were smaller, they needed to cut and throw away perfectly good meat. But while ovens have changed, what we should be doing in the relationship we should have with our money has changed as well. Now, here's something I want to warn you about. And does everyone here have a pen and piece of paper? Or if you don't, raise your hand. If you do, cool. If you don't, raise your hand, and the team will bring you one right now. As you know, I'm a huge believer in taking notes. Just bullet points. By the way, I talk faster than anyone I know, so if you try to write all my words down, it's not going to happen. Just take the concepts and write those down. But I want to start off with a quick exercise, because I want to prepare you guys for what's coming. So just keep those hands out. You'll get a pen and a piece of paper. For those of you that did not raise your hands, I expect you to have your pens and paper ready. You guys ready? Give me no yeah? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So here's what I want you guys to prepare yourselves for. Focus in. Here's what I want you guys to prepare yourselves for. When I challenge your beliefs around money, inevitably that some of you, not all, but some, will start to feel like it's wrong. Because when we've set our mind on something, and we're pretty certain that that's the way that it is, and someone teaches you the exact what? It's very easy to say, oh, it's got to be wrong. But what I want you to know is that it's not wrong, it's just the exact what? So it's not left and right, or excuse me, it is left and right. It's not right and wrong, it's right and left. Exact opposite, right? It's not up and wrong, it's up and. It's not black and wrong, it's black and. So what I'm going to do is teach the exact opposite. Notice that for those of you that have maybe the more traditional values around money, I'm going to let you continue to feel that way and think that way about your money. But for those of us that want to get the exact opposite result, maybe a 93% chance of success, sometimes we just need to do the exact what? Opposite things. So just to help you guys learn what opposite feels like and what is about to happen as I challenge you, I have a quick thing I want you to do. Because again, you guys need to believe that there might be a new way to think about money, and the way to do that is to understand that when things feel wrong, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. They're just the exact opposite of what we're used to. And here's what I want you to do. All of you hold your pens and your pieces of paper and get ready to take one of the most important notes you'll take this entire weekend. All of you do it. Even for those of you that are so cool you don't take notes, do it now. So you all have your pens and your piece of paper. You ready to go? Yes? I want you to write down what I'm about to say word for word. Here we go. But before you do, switch hands real quick. And use your exact opposite hand. Go ahead. Use your opposite hand. Go on now. Hang on now. Whoa. We haven't even started yet, and you're already enjoying yourselves. All right, everybody have their pens ready in your opposite hand. Write this down word for word. Sometimes opposite is better. Write this down with your opposite hand. Sometimes opposite is better. And now I want you to sign your name with your opposite hand so that you believe it. Sign it. Sometimes opposite is better. And sign your name. Yeah, interesting. I asked you to write 4 words and you're all like tongues are out. You're really focusing. She's wiping the sweat off of her forehead. It's challenging, yeah? All right, so here we go again. One last time. Sometimes opposite is better. And sign your name. Man, the intense concentration. Can you feel it, Nick? It's like palpable right now. They are just focused in. All right, it looks like most of you are done. Let me ask you a question. Hold on, bring it down. Let me ask you a question. Was that hard? Was it challenging? Was it different? But was it wrong? It was just a complete what? So what I want you to know is as I teach you to do things in the exact what? It might feel weird. It might feel different. It might feel strange, but it's not wrong. It's just the exact what? And you know what you just did? You tried something you might not have ever done before, and you know what we call that this weekend? We call that growing. We call that what? So give yourselves a round of applause. That was one little step in the right direction. So let's get on to what I came here to talk to you about, this stuff right here. Yeah. See, a lot of people, again, back in how I've prefaced this whole thing, have really polluted what these things were intended for, right? And although it's just a harmless bill, a lot of people have associated emotionally these dollars to be something more like this right here, right? And although this is what money should be, look at his face. There's no emotion. He's not happy. He's not sad. He's not anxious. He's not nervous. It's just cotton and ink. That's all this is. If you really want to know what that is, it is just nothing other than cotton and ink. Yet the subject of money, and whether you have it, don't, or in debt with it or whatever, many people feel like this about their money. And so I want to talk about where that comes from and why. And I have a few goals that I want to share with you guys right now. I blacked that out. I just saw a lot of concerned faces. One of the fancy things this does is that right there. So actually, you know what? Let me just back up real quick. I'll show this one because I want you guys to have the right mindset around money. Emotionless, not attached, just chilling. And so let's talk about why money was even invented. Let's take a little history lesson through humanity. Once upon a time, we were on what's called a barter system. And dude, I love John's spear, and I want a spear. But in order to get his spear, I've got to hook him up with my wool coat. And we would do an exchange because he needs a coat for the winter, and I need a spear for hunting. And now, Kai over here, man, the guy's got the best snowshoes I've ever seen. But in order to get his snowshoes, I got to give him my saber-toothed tiger necklace, right? A saber-toothed tiger teeth necklace or whatever it is. And we're on this barter system. Now, somewhere along the line, we found out that that wasn't convenient. That if I really wanted Jesse's spear and he was willing to trade it, I didn't have anything he wanted. So we said, we got to come up with something more universal. So we started turning to precious metals. And that type of money is called commodity money. What is it called? That's gold, silver, etc. And for centuries, we used commodity-based currency. It, in and of itself, has value. It has what? It has value. A 1 ounce gold coin right now, last I checked, somewhere around $1,200, yeah? You look like you would know. So $1,200-ish is about what an ounce of gold is worth today. Now, it fluctuates during market trends, etc. But it, in and of itself, has value. It's called commodity-based money. I can melt it down. I can make a necklace out of it. It has value. Now, somewhere along the lines, we realized that, you know what? We don't want to have to carry our gold with us. We want to leave it at home and use what's called an IOU. And China was the first government kind of credited for changing all of their currency into what's called fiat money. What is it called? Like the car, fiat. And it's just basically the term is, and so it is. And so what they started using is they'd say, hey, my gold's at home, but this is an IOU. It's as good as my coins, right? And people started itching their heads and saying, really? And they said, yeah, it's called fiat. Like, yes, it is, and so it is. And we started exchanging these things called fiat bills, a.k.a. our dollars today, right? And so if you trade back to why these things were, or trace back to why these things were even created, it was to trade or exchange. When I needed something that I didn't have, I would exchange goods for something else. And in the evolution of that barter system, we now have currency called fiat money. But all these things are intended for is to make an exchange, is to make a what? But so many people wrap so much emotion around these. And we judge each other by how many of these we have or don't have. And what we should or shouldn't be doing with these, we have these society beliefs. For instance, how many of you, by a show of hands in this room, were raised to believe that debt is bad? Raise your hands. If any of you were ever taught that debt was bad, looks like all of you. Isn't that interesting? Because I've made millions of dollars by getting very deep in debt. And I have made people rich by putting them in debt with me. And so it's very interesting, the mindset that people have around money, how emotionally obsessed we are when all it is an instrument or a vehicle or a utility to exchange for other things. Now, we need to be careful what we're exchanging it for, right? But I'm going to talk to you guys about, again, that belief around money and specifically debt. because I think that that's a big one that people struggle with is debt. And then we're going to talk about once you've made money, what to do with it. So there's two sides of money. There's debt and then there's surplus. Let's first focus on debt, because I, like you, have been taught to believe, bless you, that debt is bad. And that the deeper that you get into debt, the worse off it is. And you know what? Depending on what you're exchanging these things for, it can be. Unfortunately, we as Americans are not taught a whole lot of financial literacy. We don't have a whole lot of financial education. And sadly, 18-year-old freshman college students get bombarded with offers to get themselves into debt to buy things they never should have. Now, if someone once upon a time in their life sat them down and told them what debt was originally created for, back in the beginning of not only having currency, but then lending currency to others to put them in debt, of why it existed to begin with, they'd have a lot more respect around debt, what debt is. See, that's the thing, is I don't think people respect debt for what it is. Debt was originally invented, before it became adulterated into what it is today. Debt was originally created for small business owners to make profits. And so what I'm going to do right now is teach you that there's a very, very clear line in the sand between good debt and bad debt. Because I just said a second ago that I have made millions of dollars in my life by getting very deep in debt. And I have made other people very, very rich by getting very deep in debt. Now, that might even, just for some of you right now, make the little hairs on your neck tickle up. And I already promise you that I'm going to teach the exact what. As a matter of fact, by the time we're done, you might even say to your neighbor, I want to get in as much debt as quick as I can, as much as I can. Might even happen. We'll see. So what's about to happen is I'm going to unveil the process of debt. Now, I know I have some real estate people in here, and I might even call on some of you, where's Randy at, for some social proof. Randy's a good colleague of mine, to just understand further what I'm talking about. But let's first focus on what debt is to begin with. Debt, for the small business owner, was created for us to increase profit margins, or at least get started to begin with, before it became adulterated to what it is today. And I'm going to give you some examples of good debt versus bad debt. Bad debt would be consumerism. Bad debt would be buying things that cost you money. Bad debt is what the old way of thinking creates. It's people who live beyond their means, who spend money they don't have on things they shouldn't be buying. Now, I'm a little bit old-fashioned in the way I feel, but when it comes to a consumer product, something that is just an expense, I say if you don't have cash for it, you might not deserve it. Not yet. Make that a goal of your next big product launch, or your webinar sponsorship that you're picking up, or whatever it is, that as soon as I make this money in this way, I'm going to go and I'm going to pay cash. An example, actually we'll go into the examples in a second. Let me get you into good debt for a second. Because for a lot of you in here, you've never heard the conversation of good debt before in your life, yet you're surrounded by it. In almost every single establishment you walk in, you are surrounded by debt and you might not even know it. Did you know that the clothes that are on your body, the shoes that are on your feet, were brought to you by companies who are massively in debt? Did you know that? So let me give you a perfect example. If you've ever walked onto a car dealership and you are standing in the middle of that Mercedes-Benz dealership and you were looking at 150 brand new Mercedes-Benz, do you think that the owner of that dealership paid cash for all that inventory? Not a chance. He or she bought it on a line of credit, and lines of credit are called what? They're called what? Now, do you see how beautiful that Mercedes-Benz sales office is? That 5,000 square foot marble floor, whatever it is, it's Mercedes. They got to spare no expense. Do you think the man or woman that owns that dealership, or the company of collected individuals that own that, paid cash at that building? No, they probably got a mortgage, and that's also called what? So for a Mercedes-Benz dealership, which is one of the more profitable auto industry dealerships to own, can go tens of millions of dollars in debt before they even open their doors. Now, is that good debt or is that bad debt? Let's talk about another example. Have you ever walked into a grocery store? Anybody in here ever gone in a grocery store? All right, you're allowed to participate. It's okay. Nick's not getting pissed. He's happy. So, if you've ever walked into a grocery store, do you think that the corporation that owns that grocery store is paying cash for every one of those eggs and paying cash for every gallon of that milk? No, they're buying it on their corporate line of what? Which is called what? Debt. Now, are those grocery stores grossly in bad debt? No, having, what are those things called? Shelves or stock shelves or whatever it is, filled with inventory is how they create profit. It's how they create what? So what grocery stores do is they turn debt into, what car dealerships do is they turn debt into. Let's talk about this hotel. I just literally drove right in and came right inside. I didn't focus a lot on what this building looks like. I'm guessing it's not cheap. Somebody throw a number at me of what you think this hotel, because I don't know how many rooms it is. What do you think this hotel's worth? Somebody. 30 million. Wow, like 20 of you said 30 million. Let's go with it. Is it for sale? 30 million? Like, I drove right past it or something. All right. Now, guess what? That's just a $30 million building. But did you notice they had to put chandeliers in? Did you notice they had to buy chairs? Did you notice that they got to put mattresses in the hotel rooms that you guys have been sleeping on? Did you notice that they had to put sinks and faucets and showers, surrounds, curtains? Did you notice they had to actually stock their whole entire hotel with everything it takes to make this place a hotel? Outside of the $30 million they had to take to buy the building and the land, guess what else they had to do? Make it ready to open and be in business. Would you guys guess that might be $1 million or $2 million or 10 or something more? Yes? Let's just say all the mattresses and all that was only another $10 million. We're talking maybe $40 million. This hotel potentially was $40 million in debt before it opened. Is that good debt or bad debt? So are you starting to feel a little bit different about debt now? Yeah? One last example, one of my favorite shows. Anybody seen Shark Tank? Yes. Okay, most of you have, right? Because you've all got the same spirit I do. A lot of that, they do two things on Shark Tank. It's a hybrid of a VC firm / angel investor, because angel investors like myself, we invest our own money. VCs are firms. Those guys are like their own firm, but anyway, they're a hybrid. And typically what they're doing is lending for equity. And it looks like the company or the individual that's borrowing the money is not going into debt, right? Because the good news is if their company fails, the sharks just lose their money versus having like credit card where even if the company fails, you'd still owe it, right? So here's the difference. If the company fails, they've got an out. But what about when the company succeeds? Let's say that they have $1 million valuation and they sell 10% of their company, right? $10,000 to sell 10% of their company. Is that right? $100,000, that's 10%. $100,000 for 10% of their company, for their $1 million company. Let's say that company grows to $500 million and the shark wants out. Do they now owe that shark that money? Yes. They would have to sell that portion of their company for what? $500 million, so it's a $500 million, so $5 million in that case, if we're sticking at 10%. That's still called debt. And then they do another type of loan on there, and I don't have time to teach this, I wish I could. It's called venture debt. What is it called? Where in exchange for a large equity position, they take a low. Usually see Mr. Wonderful. He's the one that always does the venture debt deals. He is a hardcore venture capitalist. So the venture debt deal is where Kevin O'Leary usually offers them, hey, instead of taking 30% of your company, I only want 5%. But I'm going to take $10 off the top of every sale until I've tripled my money. And at that point, the $10 goes away and I only own 5% of your company. That's called venture debt. Got it? Say got it. So what these startup entrepreneurs are doing is they're going and getting themselves into what? To go and make themselves what? Profits and money. So have we started already? How many of you are already starting to feel a little bit differently about debt? Let me see your hands, just already. Because we were taught by grandma and grandpa, don't get into debt, right? And maybe in their day and age, it would have made sense. Yet here I am, started off being a real estate investor in Southern California. If I wanted to buy a home, I need to come up with $600,000-$800,000. And then if I want to fix it up, maybe another $100,000 on top of that. I might be $700,000 to $800,000 in debt. But the good news is I know that when I sell that property, I could pay my debts off and keep the money. Now, Randy and I, we have great, close mutual friends. Randy, I don't even know if you're at the leisure of sharing, but I was talking to the CEO of your business, says that you are working on 27 projects right now. Do you even know what type of money it takes right now? Like, are you even allowed to share that? How much borrowed cash it takes collectively to flip the 27 houses that you guys? It'd be like $13.5 million. So he works for a group of guys that I'm close friends with. They're right over here in Pacific Beach. And what he just shared is that they're about $13.5 million in what? Now, last time I checked, they weren't hurting on cash, were they? They own like basically Pacific Beach. Any building on Grand, you can kind of point at it and it's theirs. And so what I'm painting the picture of is starting to soften your fear towards of understand that when it's used for profits or for business, it can be a good thing. So the question then becomes is how do you guys get yourselves into debt? And there's a lot of different options for you. There's a lot of different options for you. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Good debt, bad debt. Gotta have rims on my car, so I throw it on a credit card. Good debt, bad debt. Bad debt. Need to build a website that's going to convert where all of my webinars send people to convert to capture emails or even convert them for a sale, yet I'm short on cash and I put that on a credit card. Good debt, bad debt. My wife walks into Nordstrom's with a credit card. Good debt, bad. There she is. There she is. I hire a consultant. Hang on. Just so you know, my wife, she's amazing. I'm just giving her a hard time. She knows better than use a credit card. happy wife, happy life. Yes, guys? Yeah? Been married 3.5 years, and I can tell you that with confidence. Happy wife, happy life. But she doesn't use her credit card. She pays cash. There you go. Different, and we'll talk about that in a second. Different example. I need to hire a consultant to help get my business to the next level because I'm pretty capable and pretty intelligent. I work pretty hard, but yet I only have one perspective. So I need to hire someone to come into my business, evaluate it, and help me get to the next level. I'm short on cash, so I put that on a credit card. Good debt, bad debt? Good debt. Okay. I'm a car fanatic. I got my brand new Viper. I got to put a supercharger on it and a new exhaust system to make it faster and louder. Good debt, bad debt? You watch your mouths. That is good debt right there. No, I'm just kidding. That's my Viper right there now. So what am I saying? Am I saying that I don't get to enjoy life and send my wife to Nordstrom's and put things on my Viper? No. I'm saying that's not what you finance. You pay cash for those things. So debt is borrowed money. You do not borrow money, and I want you to write this down. You do not borrow money for things that cost you money. You do not borrow money for things that cost you money. You borrow money for the following two things only. Write this down. Income streams and assets. You borrow money for two things and two things only. Income streams and assets. So I'm a real estate investor, and I know I've been laying heavy on that. I invest in companies, etc. But obviously a house would be an asset. So if I go and, like Randy, get into debt on average $500,000 a deal and do 27 of them at a time, and I'm 13 mil in the hole, that's a whole lot of debt. But they have, what would you say the average ARV is of the houses that you're putting in for $500,000? What is the average ARV? This is real estate talk. I just need the number. What's the ARV of the average home? 650. So now we'd have to do 650 times 27. My brain doesn't work like that, but just know it's a whole lot bigger than 13.5 million. Probably north of 16 million or something like that. So what that means is that even though and I'm using this because it's a big number, I do this in my own business, not quite as big as the guys that he works for do, but we're selling a house right now in Newport Beach for $1.2 million. Guess what? If I'm into it for $1.1 million of debt, which I'm not, but if I was, and I sold it for $1.2 million, did that debt matter? No, because I'm walking away with what? $100,000 in my pocket. Got it? Say got it? So you never borrow money, aka debt, for things that cost you money. You only borrow money for income streams and assets. Got it? Say got it? All right, so you already know what assets are, and you can let your brain wander. Houses, land, commercial buildings, things like having equity in a new startup company. Those are assets. What would you guys think are some income streams? I want to hear from you. What do you guys think? Shout them out. She says, what about education? What do you guys think about education? Good debt, bad debt? Here's what we're going to do. For those of you that say good debt, you're going to stand over here, bad debt over here, and we're going to roll our sleeves up. Nah, I'm just kidding. Here's what I have found, and here's my personal beliefs around that, and I don't have time to go deep. Let's talk about two things. Good debt, bad debt, student loans. Good debt, bad debt, education. So it seems like for most of us are on the same page. Here's my beliefs. I don't disrespect people with degrees. I think that the fact that those of you in here who have them or several of them shows that when you start something, you finish, and that is a trait that entrepreneurs need. So when I meet a man or woman who has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into multiple degrees, I respect that they're that committed and that things like that matter to them, although I went a different direction, kind of the exact opposite. I think that investing in education is 100% of the time a good investment. Now, borrowing money for it, it depends on what type of education you're getting. And I'll leave it there. Because remember, I'm not saying it's right and wrong. The old way of thinking is the only way to financial security is a job and a degree. And at once upon a time, a degree got you a job. Let me ask you this. Does a degree get you a job today anymore? It's required, but having one doesn't get you one. Does that make sense? Required in some jobs. So let me make sure I'm being very clear on this because I don't want to offend people in here who have degrees. I respect it. Once upon a time, having a degree basically meant you got yourself a job. Today, jobs could require a degree, but just having a degree doesn't get you a job anymore. So if I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt and couldn't get a job, I would say that's a bad debt. So what I might do instead is still value education, but I might go into debt to learn how to make money instead. And that's what I've done. And I could stand here today and tell you with 100% sincerity and look you all in the face that I've invested well over $200,000 cash into my education. None of that was a degree. I don't have a degree. But I've invested in Randy's employers a ton of money and individuals just like them. You're like the star of the show, Randy. You didn't even know it. Thank God you took a shower today. But the guys that write his checks are worth a ton of money. And so I saw an opportunity to invest tens of thousands of dollars, about $35,000 in total, to have multi-millionaires show me how to make millions of dollars. And I put it on a credit card. And I would call that good debt. And I have invested well over $200,000 into opportunities like that where I saw a direct connection. Instead of, and again, not knocking degrees, but instead of ending up with a degree and then hoping for a job, I ended up with learning how to make money. I invested in someone that was an expert in their niche, and I put my money in their pocket even if it was borrowed, because what I learned in exchange for the investment, and I call it investment, the investment into them was not only how to make that money back, but make 5 times as much money back easily. So if I'm going to put $35,000 into our mutual friends over there, it's because I knew I'd make $150,000 that year with what they taught me. Does that make sense? So here's my response to education as a whole. Borrowed money for education is good debt if the education you're investing in has a tangible way of getting that money back. If it's just as, hey, I'm $200,000 in debt and I have a degree in cinema deconstruction or whatever my friend's reconstruction, something like that. Something that, okay, you've got your degree, but no one's going to give you a job for knowing cinema, whatever it is. That poor friend of mine who is lots of thousands of dollars in debt probably won't get a job from that. But when I see an opportunity to invest in someone like our mutual friend there, I see an opportunity to make money back, I do it, and I would do it on debt every time. Does that answer your question? Say yeah. So that's a good one. So let's speed up a little bit. Other examples. So that's one great example of debt for income streams, right? Another one would be maybe a website. Is that an asset? No, it doesn't show up in your asset column. So what is a website? If you go into debt for a website, well, it's an income stream because now you're generating leads. And if you have a product for sale, now you're generating income. Does that make sense, guys? Say yeah. So we've got to move on. I'll let you use your imaginations, knowing the difference between what an asset is and an income stream and something that will cost you money. Shoes, I'm sorry, ladies, they're only going to cost you money. Gentlemen, I was going to say watches, but I actually have watches that are going up, so I got to stop there. But some of the things, gentlemen, that we like to, like toys for our cars, right? A supercharger would not be an investment. You need to know the difference. Now, one last thing I want to say about debt before we move on is you need to be very clear on where that line is in the sand and not fudge it. Because I meet people that understand that there is good debt out there and say, man, car dealerships go millions of dollars, hotels go millions of dollars, so I'm going to go into debt for business-related assets. Like, man, I bet you I'd make more money if I had a 7 Series BMW, right? So I'm going to go into debt because now I'll look better for my clients. There we go. And they start fudging it. You know what I'm saying? They've got a computer that's totally capable, but they need 2 more for their business-related activities. So they're going to go into more debt. So you guys need to govern yourselves accordingly and make sure that as you're going into debt, you got that line in the sand. If it's going to cost you money, you avoid it. If it's going to make you money, you're in. Got it? Say I got it? And this is how I've made my money, you guys. I have borrowed money and gotten tremendously in debt to flip houses. We've talked about that. I have lent my money out for other real estate investors where I have put them hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with me. And when they've paid me back, they've made 5 times their money back, at least. Or, guess what? I've also invested my own money into companies where I'm putting those companies in debt with me. Small business owners, startups just like yourselves. People who come to me with an idea need $150,000 to patent it, to try to get a utility patent, design patent, etc. Need the right attorneys to do that. They're in debt to me now, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. Yet, guess what? They can go and start multi-million-dollar businesses. And if you're running a $1 million business, does $100,000 worth of debt to get started matter to you anymore? Here's what I have learned as an investor. If it makes you money, it costs you nothing. Does that make sense? You can even write that down. Write this down. If it makes you money, it costs you nothing. That is something that is unnatural because of most of our beliefs around money, but it is something that is an important reality to learn. So read it back to me. I want you guys to hear it. What did you just write down? Yeah, let's get an example of that. One last real estate example. I know that maybe only a few of you in here are real estate, but I think that's something that we can all understand because some of you in here are info marketers. Some of you guys, right? So we can all understand real estate. You just found an amazing deal, an amazing opportunity, except you need $5 million. Now, you don't have $5 million. I do. And so you come to me and ask me for $5 million, and I say, I'm willing to give it to you. I'll give you the $5 million, but I'm going to charge you 100% interest. So that means not only do you have to pay me my $5 million back, and another $5 million on top of it. It's going to be a $10 million payday for me. But the property that you want to tie up that you have under contract, you already have a buyer lined up for $11 million. So you borrow $5 million from me. Not only do you have to pay me the $5 million back, you have to double it and pay me back 10. But when the deal is closed for 11, you've paid me back my $10 million and have $1 million in your pocket. Let me ask you a question. How much did that deal cost you? Well, the old way of thinking would say that deal cost you $10 million. But the entrepreneur way of thinking, as you're thumbing through $1 million saying, all right, you can feel that way, right? Because what a lot of people do out of fear of debt is they pass on opportunity. And that's one of the ways I make the most money, is because I see beginner investors in my industry going and seeing opportunities that require them to borrow money and they're afraid to do it. And I love debt because I get rich from it. And I'll borrow $5 million at 100% interest that I have to pay back $10 million if I know I could sell it for $11 million. Because guess what? It didn't cost me anything. Now, I fight with people on this because they're like, yes, it did cost you something. Cool, it cost you $10 million. And I say, cool, guess what? There's $1 million on my tax return that wouldn't have been there otherwise. It didn't cost me any money. I borrowed money, went into debt to make profits. You guys get it? Say, I got it. All right, we've got to move on out of debt. I think you guys have got a different understanding now, yes? So let me ask you a question. When you see the guys on Shark Tank, or the companies going and pitch Shark Tanks, and when you look at the car dealerships now, and we look at hotels like this, you now see that debt makes what? When you use it for income streams and assets only, yes? So let me ask you this. You guys have a problem with debt? So are you guys willing to get into as much debt as quick as you can, as fast as you can? Turn to your neighbor, give him a high five, say, I'm going to get as much debt as quick as I can, as fast as I can. Now let me ask you a question. What type of debt? Good debt, bad debt? All right, give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are awesome. And so there's one part that I want to transition into right now that's important for me, because I don't want to just stand up here and look like I'm some money-hungry capitalist, because I am in the business of turning money, right? I'm an investor. And so although in some cases I invest in houses, businesses, etc., it's my business to turn money for profits. Yes, I focus on ROI, return on what? Investments, exactly, yeah. So that's why Nick is like, dude, since you're in the world of finance and money and all you do is write checks, basically that's all I do. I just write checks, calculating that when the check comes back, it will have grown from when it left. So I've gotten really good at letting my money go, and I've gotten better at letting your money go, paying you back and keeping the difference, right? But I want you to know that there's a bigger picture of why I am as focused and as energized and as fired up around making money as I am. And so some of you have already pulled me aside and said that you saw the episode that I just launched with Nick on Monday. That's cool. If not, no worries. I'm going to summarize what I do with my money once I've made it. Because I said we're going to have 2 conversations. How many are we going to have? 2. I want to talk specifically about debt and getting into as much as you can, as quick as you can. Think about that Mercedes-Benz dealership. The more debt he gets into or she gets into, the more inventory, right? The more money they can make. So remember that. Even if it feels a little weird, it's just the exact what? Opposite. But now let's focus. And you guys have gotten comfortable with business debt, with venture debt, with even credit card debt. Because as I'm talking about debt, I think you guys have bought in and you understand that. The question is, well, then where do I get borrowed money? Unfortunately, until you have assets, there's really one place and one place only. Banks. They're really the only ones that'll give you debt to begin with, right? Big firms, VC firms, et cetera, are not going to be very interested in you until you have a what they call a proof of concept. But getting started, really the only people that will give you money are banks. And there's only 3 ways banks do that. If you own a home and have equity, it's called a home equity line of credit, credit cards, or if you have businesses, they're called UBLs, unsecured business lines of credit. That's really it. And so what you all need to become very comfortable with is not just debt itself, but where your debt is coming from. Because we've also been taught by the same people that we referred to earlier, that Zig Ziglar tells a story about, that credit card specific debt, credit card debt is bad. And the reason it is because credit card companies have totally adulterated the process of leverage, the process of borrowing money for income, and they shove it down 18-year-olds' throats, and then they promote it all over TV, everywhere you want to be. Anytime you can't afford it, we got your back. Or ask Aunt Visa or Uncle MasterCard, we got you, right? Swipe it. And unfortunately, because no one has the conversation that we've had tonight, people start swiping for things that cost them money. So what I want you guys to know that as you go out there now, understand the difference between good debt and bad debt, and you're about to launch a website, or you see an opportunity to invest in education, there you are, education, where you know you'll make your money back, then here's what you need to understand. Question 1, is this good debt, bad debt? Good debt. Number 2, where's the debt coming from? For most of you in here, it has to start with credit cards. And so you've got to retrain your mindset around your credit cards. If that's what it takes to get started, you've got to understand that never once, when you walk into Nordstrom, leave your wallet in the car. But when you walk into a business deal and you've got to invest in a website and you have $3,000 to your name and they want 10,000, and that website is where every lead that makes you every penny is coming from, I will go $7,000 in debt in a second to turn on that income stream. Got it? Say got it? So keep that in mind. All right, so we got to stop talking about money because I want to share with you what I'm most passionate about. You've got a surplus now. You got into debt. You bought things that were income streams and assets. You now have 10 times the income stream and asset of the debt that it took to get started. You're okay with debt now because people who play at the big level are, for the most part, in debt. I can't think of a business other than a few that don't go into debt to provide their products and services. Even the shoes you're wearing. Guess what? That rubber probably was on a line of credit. The dye that was in the leather of the shoes was probably bought on a line of credit, depending on who the shoe manufacturer is. This is just a world of debt. One last part. Our economy takes $55 trillion to run. $3 trillion is cash, $52 trillion is debt. It's credit. To make America spin in a circle around the world takes $55 trillion bucks, and $52 trillion of it is actually borrowed money. So keep that in mind. Okay, I'm going to share this last thing with you. You're in a surplus. You've got money. Let me help you one more time reframe what you should do with your money, because we've stumbled onto, some colleagues of mine that have joined me here tonight, we've stumbled onto something that really summarizes my beliefs around money, of making money matter. And a couple of the guys that are here, we were chit-chatting at my house last week, and a guy named Jeff was evaluating what I do with my money. He's like, you know what you're doing, Cole? Your money is buying you happiness. Now, anybody in here ever taught money can't buy you happiness? Anybody ever taught that? By a show of hands, yes? Anybody at all? Okay. Do you want me to teach you how money can buy you happiness? Yeah? Credit to Jeff for kind of phrasing that, but he was evaluating my life, and he's like, dude, Cole, do you know what you do? You buy your happiness. You want me to show you what that looks like? Say, oh, yeah? Okay, so this is only the second time I've ever shared this. The first time was the first time Nick asked me to speak at one of his events, a breakfast function, and now I'm pulling it back out of the archives just for you, my man. So this is the second time anyone has ever in the world seen this. All credit due, though. Although I only pull out for Nick's event, one of Nick's sponsors here, Ree, actually designed this for me. So is Ree in the room, or is he outside? There he is. Oh, what's up, Ree? So another value that, take a bow. No, another bit of value that Nick brought to my life wasn't just what he taught me about. So I've made millions of dollars, right? I was not a business startup. But in the world of money I've made, I never needed a social presence ever. I'm buying and selling real estate. My Twitter, who cares? And so I went to Nick and I talked to him about, hey, bro, I'm in a rock right now. I make more money than most people, but no one cares because they don't know I'm alive. How do I get out into the world? Because I'm seeing that I'm missing opportunities. So Nick started teaching me, and this is where our coaching kind of existed, on how to get out there. And one of those, he's like, Ree Perez can help you brand, etc. And so this is a creation of Ree, but really Nick, not just training me on how to get social media presence, but the connections he made in my business in areas I was a total novice in, like branding, etc. And the connections that Nick made is a really big value that he created for me as well. How many of you in here believe that investing in relationships is one of the greatest investments you can make in your life? Raise your hands. And so one of the greatest benefits I've gotten from my relationship with Nick is the friends that I've been able to make, like a lot of you I'm meeting here this weekend as well. Okay, so pulling out this slide real quick. This is what Ree calls the 4 quadrants that he summarized my life in. That I in my life have lived in and owned each of these 4 quadrants, and every single one of you in this room will also be able to self-identify which quadrant you're in right now. And then I'm going to make an argument to wherever you've found yourself where you're going to want to be. And that is what I do with my money and why my money matters. Remember I said I'm going to show you how to make your money matter and how to buy your happiness? Here's what it looks like. First, I want you to focus in the top left. Now, Ree is cringing because this was a very crude graphic that was made very quickly for the last time I spoke, and I haven't updated it since. It's going to look sexier, I promise. All right, Ree? I could see you sweating. So the idea and concept came from Ree. The graphic design did not. There you go. I saved you, bro. Now, what I want you to focus on is there's a vertical axis. Do you see the vertical axis? It's called profits. What is it called? There's also a horizontal axis. It's called purpose. What is it called? Now, in the top left quadrant, you're having lots of profits and very little purpose in how you make your money, and I call that the earning quadrant. What is it called? This is the earning quadrant. And sadly, this is where you're told you'll find your happiness. I never stay on stage. I don't know if Nick even coming out here, but I got to move around. This is what the world tells you you're going to be happy. The more you earn, the happier you'll be. Yet I can introduce you to 30 multi-millionaire friends of mine that are some of the saddest, most unhappy people in the world. And we're taught that your happiness will come with riches and fame. It won't, because without mentioning names, how many celebrities do we see who are the richest and most famous people in the world that are unhappy, and some who have even committed suicide? So I promise you, it's not finding your happiness or your worth or value in your dollars that you're going to find it. It's what you exchange those dollars for. Back to what we talked about originally. So let's focus on this again. The top left quadrant is where the world promises you'll be happy. I promise you, Jacob, Dante, Michaela, the more money you make, the happier you're going to be. Here's the problem. The more money I made, the richer my friends got, which is part of what happens. Not Jack Canfield, who is it? Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with. The more money I made, all of a sudden my friends became guys like, where'd you go, Randy? He's gone. I wouldn't blame him. I've been picking on him this whole time. Guys like Randy's employers who are great friends of mine now that are worth 9 figures, right? So as my network changed, I realized that no matter who I hung out with, they were richer than me, which was what I've been taught to do, be the dumbest person in the room, be the brokest person in the room, and that's a huge business strategy. But then you never have enough if that's your value. So as I hang out with myself, I made $1 million that year, and I'm stoked. But they made $1 million yesterday. I'm like, God, I suck, right? I'm not making enough to have the value that I need. And it's because you can't find value in the top left quadrant. Now, am I saying making money is bad? That's not what I'm saying at all. But making money for money's sake is just chasing the wind, because I promise you'll never have enough. Now, a lot of people challenge that and say, well, that's easy for you to say. You're rich. You have it. I haven't always been. I have not always been. I had 2 wealth cycles in my life. From 23 to 26, I was in the right place at the right time and got rich quick. I was in real estate in the boom, and I was just dumb luck, crushed it. I was also in real estate in the crash and lost everything. And 4.5 years ago was 4 years ago was absolutely broke. When I married my wife, literally, and she'll vouch for this, when we were on our honeymoon, I was tripped out because I had no idea how we were going to pay our bills when we got back. I literally was in, where were we? Venice, Italy, saying, oh my gosh, literally when we go home, we're going to have to borrow money from our parents. I'm screwed. And that lit a fire under my butt, but I also changed the mindset of what I'm about to teach you right now and became a millionaire 20 months later. And I've made 7 figures or more every year since. That mind shift is what I'm going to walk you through right now. But so I was broke 4 years ago. Had made money before, but lost it all in the recession and the real estate bust, right? My income went bust as well. And so what I will tell you is, people say, Cole, it's easy for you to say that money isn't where you'll find your net worth because you have it all, right? You are rich. So all rich people say that. I hear that a lot. Cole, all rich people say it's not about the money. Well, then listen to them, because we have it, and we're telling you it's not about the money. The next quadrant. So, oh, by the way, this top left quadrant I lived in from 23 to 26. I was a punk. I was making in some months 6 figures in a month, and I ran straight to the Cadillac dealership, bought myself brand new Escalades. I ran and I bought myself brand new $100,000 wakeboard boats. I'm 24 years old, driving around. I remember I was so proud, right? I was like, okay, the value of my Escalade and all the TVs, I had to have 5 TVs in it, of course. One's not enough, 5S. I was like, I bet you there's about 150 grand bumper to bumper. And I felt like I was so great, like I'd made it. That was the earning quadrant. I had some relationships fall apart, including my wife, who's now my wife, was my girlfriend at the time, freaking dumped me. Can you believe that, right? Dumped me, right? On Cinco de Mayo, right? How un-American is it to dump me on a Mexican holiday, right? Like that we celebrate in America. So anyway, things fell apart. Then I found myself in the bottom left quadrant. It's called the survival quadrant. What is it called? Or surviving. Those are people that if you look at the gradient right here, you see that they're not making a lot of money and they don't really have a lot of purpose. Oh, by the way, let me talk about the purpose gradient. My bad. Back up to earning. It's not that those people don't want to make a difference. They're just focused on the money. They think that that's where they'll find their value, is square footage in their home and cars on their driveway. So as they're working their butts off for money, they might have very generous giving spirits, but they never get around to making a difference because they're too focused on making the money. And a lot of them want to make a difference, but they think they've got to get rich enough first. Once I've made it and I'm sitting around watching Days of Our Lives or whatever retired people do, then I'll go and I'll give back, right? So let's not label and villainize people. Earners are great people, but they've bought into the belief that it's the money itself that will make them happy, and they haven't focused outward yet, okay? So a lot of income, very little purpose. Survival quadrant. They're not making money and they're not making a difference. Now, that might not be, again, because they're bad people. They're not making a difference because they don't have the financial means to do so. These are when you see both spouses each working 2 jobs, and literally it's paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by each month by the skin of their teeth. Are those bad people because they don't give back? No, they can't, because they have to in that season, because it's always just a season. In that season of life, they have to focus on survival. If you're in an ocean and a bunch of ships are sinking, including your own, you're not in a position to help anybody until your ship stops sinking. You've got to focus on bailing water. Agreed? Because if you stop bailing water out of your own ship to go save someone else, you won't even make it, you'll sink. So for people in the survival quadrant, they're so busy bailing water that they can't help any of the other sinking ships at all. Even if they wanted to, they can't. And based on statistics and mathematics alone, that's where more than half of America is. You hear the statistics all the time of how many Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I have had the privilege of standing on stage and talking to over 40,000 people live now, and every single time I have the opportunity to talk to a group like this, I ask the same question I'll ask you now. If money and time didn't matter, you had all the money and all the time in the world to do it and spend it any way you want. Think about that. Do what you want, when you want, how you want, with who you want, any way you want to do it, for as long as you want to do it. How many of you would set some of that time aside to give back to someone in some way? Raise your hands. Looks like all of you. And you know what? That's what everybody says. Yet, in the survival quadrant, they can't, because they have to focus on themselves. I lived in that quadrant from 26 to 27 and a half. That was, for me, 2009, 10, and getting into the beginning of 2011. I even moved out of this country. I moved to Mexico for 7 months to work at a nonprofit, because after my girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, so obviously I got her back, didn't I, right? That's why Nick should definitely teach you the value of following up with clients, right? I followed up with her, and I got her in the end, so thank God. But that being said, it's true, right? They say the fortune's in the follow-up. It was for me. So coming back to the point, whatever the point was, when I was living in Mexico, I was in survival mode. I was living off my savings, and although I was being productive with my time, we hadn't gotten to Mexico yet. I was in the survival mode, and that's what made me leave. I was doing everything I could in a recession and a crashed real estate market to just keep my lights on. I finally, girlfriend dumped me, moved to Mexico, and then I got into the giving quadrant. What's the bottom right quadrant called? It's called the giving quadrant. Now, this is what I spent my time doing all day, every day. Building houses for homeless people in Mexico. I lived down there, and I volunteered full-time on a staff for a nonprofit that builds houses for homeless families. And I was being totally productive with my time. Every day was filled with purpose. I did nothing other than give back to others. But I was making no income. I literally sold everything I had and went to Mexico with my savings and what I had gotten from selling my junk to live off of as long as I could. And I made it 7 months just living off my savings. Obviously, cost of living is a lot lower in Mexico, but rent and all the stuff I had to pay to be down there, I made it 7 months until I was completely broke. That was 4 years ago. And I was in the giving quadrant. I felt fulfillment. Every day was meaningful. I changed people's lives. I can't tell you how many families hugged me, kissed me, crying that I'd put a home over their house. Now, this is just working for the nonprofit. I can't take all the credit for that. But it was all meaningful stuff. But guess what? I was working for a nonprofit, and I was limited in how much of a difference I could make. And outside of my job was building houses, I was completely broke and not able to do anything for anyone. I came back to America, I was still in love, but got her to say yes, got married, restarted my business, focusing in the top right quadrant of the thriving quadrant. What is it called? Thriving. And I said, you know what? I want to thrive, and I want to make my money matter. And I started making money with a different reason than I did in the giving or in the earning quadrant. See, I was making more money, and I make more money now than I ever have in my life. Even when I was that punk 24-year-old, I make more money now, but I do it while I make a difference. And we don't have time to dive deep into what that looks like, but I call it a for-purpose business. What is it called? Where I make as much money as I can, making as big of a difference as I can as I go. And this is the last mindset belief I want to talk to you about. People think it's wrong to be rich. Not you, some. And I get a lot of feedback from people that say, you know what, Cole, I'm encouraged to make more money because I was raised in my belief system, whether it be religious or just what your parents have taught you, that being rich and making money is bad. And so I'll use one company as an example that most of us can relate to that's called Tom's. Anybody heard of Tom's Shoes? And if you're not familiar with Tom's Shoes, I'll break it down for you. The founder, Blake, said, you know what, I'm going to make shoes, but I'm going to, for every pair of shoes someone buys, give a pair of shoes away to a child in a third world country. And fast forward today, Tom's, I believe a few months ago, sold half his company. Was it for 500 million, JJ? 50 million. Sold half his company for $50 million. The guy's freaking crushing it financially. The guy's a multi-millionaire. That was only half his company. The guy's a multi-millionaire. He lives a great lifestyle of anything you can imagine because money's no longer an object to him. But guess what? At the end of his year, looking at all the cars, the houses, the vacations, and the success he's had, the greatest fulfillment he gets is that literally hundreds of thousands of kids who couldn't even afford shoes have shoes on their feet now. And so he made a difference while he made his money. So every company I own is called a for-purpose business. And what I have found is that the more financially successful I become, because I've tied an element within that company of giving back, whether it be product, for every product I sell, I give product away, or money, for every product I sell, I give X amount of dollars away. The more financially successful I become, that means a bigger difference I'm making. And that was a big mind shift for me, is because now I'm hungry for success, not for the finer things in life. And don't kid yourselves, every dream car I've ever wanted is in my house or my garage right now. We live in a beautiful home up in Orange County. We're not starving ourselves. But here's the perspective I paint for people. Picture your dream life and ask yourself how much money it would take. Maybe $1 million? $1 million a year of discretionary income, you can kind of do anything. You might not own a private jet, but you can fly in one anytime you want. Making about $100,000 a month, there's really nothing you have to say no to every month, $100,000. So let's just say your dream life's $1 million a year life. Cool. Do it. Live it. But I challenge you to make $2 million a year and give half your money away. Why should you feel guilty about getting in a private jet and flying to Bora Bora for the weekend when at the same time you're building a home for a homeless family, or you're feeding an orphanage, or you're doing something with a give element to give back along the way? Does that make sense? Say, oh yeah? And that's how I've structured my businesses now. And that is why Jeff says, you know what you're doing, Cole? Your money is buying your happiness. Because back to the original conversation we had about money, it is just there to exchange. Just like how I'd have to exchange my coat for his spear. We only exchange dollars for experiences and for possessions, right? And I would challenge you guys to make sure to exchange your dollars in ways that matter, therefore making your money matter. Therefore, at the end of the day, you can have no guilt that you're living your dream life, because at the same time, you're changing other people's lives around it. So to summarize what we just talked about with the mindset of money, two things. Number one, be comfortable with debt. Know the difference between good and bad debt. Understand how to leverage. When you borrow other people's money, that's called leverage. What is it called? Understand what leverage is, but good leverage. Don't get in bad debt. Ever again, don't ever get in consumer debt. Ever. Get into good debt, like buying income streams and assets. And as you are succeeding, I challenge you guys to believe me from personal experience that if you just make money to get rich for yourself and buy stuff, it does get old. Not at first. Not at first. I lived 5 years on the top of the world, right? But not at first, but it will. It'll get old. So I challenge you to don't feel like you have to give all your money away and live in poverty and you're working for nothing. Love your life, enjoy your life, but make your money matter by bringing others along with you. And that is my belief of money. And that's why Nick said, hey, Cole thinks about money differently than anyone else. Yeah, because all it is to me, it's just an instrument. It's just a vehicle. It's just a utility. And all money does for me is I get to exchange it with some really fun moments with my wife. I get to exchange it with some really fun experiences with my daughter. And I get to exchange it to put a roof over a homeless family. And since I started with that organization, I've built 37 houses for homeless families in Mexico. Thank you, but I use Tom's shoes as an example. I'm going to bring Nick back on stage because I want to share one more thing about Nick. Before you come, don't come yet. No, I see the curtain moving. Not yet. Some of you. Well, I want to brag about you for a second, so I don't want you to turn pink on stage. Being close friends with Nick outside of the professional world, he and I have been able to bro out, and he and fiance Megan have been able to come up and hang with us. And do you guys, for those of you that have followed Nick and the Life on Fire brand for a while, do you remember the virtual summit he put on in the fall of last year? Do you know how much risk and how much personal money and how much personal time Nick put into that? Do you know how many tens of thousands of dollars of marketing and advertising he had to put into that? Do you want to know how much money he made from it? None. But do you want to know what he did? He built a school in Guatemala with pencils of promise. And that's a perfect example of having a life on fire and a for-purpose brand, that he was willing to not just make money. It's not like he's hurting financially. The guy's doing great. But at the same time, put in that much of his own money to risk it for others, and put in that much time to design this virtual summit where 100% of profits went to a school. And guess what? He was able to write that $25,000 check, FYI, to build that school in Guatemala. And that's an example of life on fire and living in the thriving quadrant. With that, let's go ahead and bring Nick back up on stage.
All right. I just did that on purpose. That was not
All right,
nice.
am I done?
Awesome, man. Awesome. Let's give a hand for Cole Hatter. Come on now. That's awesome. Give a hand. Give a hand.
All right, so how good was that session with Cole? I wish you could have been there at Ignite. It was so powerful, and that was just one of the many amazing sessions at Ignite. And so before we wrap up, I just want to share with you, if you're catching me right here, right now, right as this episode aired, we've got a really awesome opportunity that is just going to be around for a little bit longer, and it's to join us in our Firestarter Pro coaching program. And what we're doing is we're taking entrepreneurs that are just super committed. They've got the sleeves rolled up and ready to just get into action. And so if you feel that you've got just something inside of you that is just like this fire, this passion, you want to do something big with your life and your business, and you've been watching Life on Fire TV, you've been hanging around our community, you've been seeing success stories, and you're thinking, I want to be that person. Or maybe you've been watching, other people's online brands grow, and you're sick of watching and you want to then now become it. It's like, if you've got that inside of you and you've got that just desire for more, I want to encourage you right now to get a coach and let that person help you get there. And the thing is that, of course, I have a coaching program. I would love to learn more about you and to see if we're a fit together. But truly, whether it's me or somebody else, I encourage you, and I hope that right now this message just gets through, that whether it's me or someone else, just get yourself a coach. Because I can't tell you how many people that have had so much breakthrough because they've got someone that is just helping them get clear. I mean, if you've ever had a time in business where you've just had all these ideas, all these things and dreams and desires and things you want to accomplish and do, but you just don't know exactly where to start or what to do. And if you feel overwhelmed and you're like, man, if I just had this, or if I just had that, or if I just had someone that could help me identify what is my brand or my target market, or what am I building and how do I get started? It's like, that's what I do, for people. And that's what any good coach would do, is to sit down with you one-on-one and literally help you identify what the greatness is inside of you and help you literally build a plan around your gifts. So it's like, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And what would you love to do every single day? And what my job is, I help you take that and create a whole business around it with a why and a mission and a vision that's so big that you instantly will have just a crazy thought about, and a visual and a picture of just where your life will end up. And that's what I do, is I help to basically stretch you and to think bigger about your life and your mission. And so if you're at this spot where you've been thinking about it, you've been hearing about it, and you're like, you know what, I'm not sure if now's the right time, I just want to ask you this one thing. If not now, when? I mean, truly, if it's not going to be now that you're going to take the action, or just, burn the boats behind you and say, I'm going all in, I'm finally doing it, I'm going for it. If it's not now, when's it going to happen? And so again, whether it's me or someone else, do yourself a favor, get yourself a coach. I would love to, have a conversation. I would love to see if we're a right fit for each other. We certainly don't take everybody. We've got a lot of people that have, applied to be a part of the Firestarter Pro coaching program. It is one-on-one coaching, but it's also part of being a part of our community. And we really have to make sure that everyone's the right fit, and that we would only coach someone if we can help them, right? So if we couldn't help you, and we couldn't help you get to the 6-figure business and then to the 7-figure, then we wouldn't even entertain the relationship. So if you've been thinking about it and it's on your heart and you're not sure what to do, then I encourage you to apply. And then if need be, we can then answer any questions, and we can hop on the phone and see if it's a good fit. So we are going to be closing this up and wrapping it up very soon. So just go to firestarterpro.com and you can apply, and we can hop on the phone if you have questions. And again, firestarterpro.com. And so I hope that you roll up the sleeves and get ready to get into action. And I hope that you make a decision to take just action on your dreams and just go for it. So again, I hope to see you on the other side of firestarterpro.com. And again, if it's not me, somebody, get yourself a coach. And I wish you all the success, and I hope to talk to you soon. Cheers.